Now, we outwardly are free with agency and inwardly are bound by destiny. So we've addressed this to an extent, but we previously had mentioned we outwardly are bound. We outwardly are free with agency, and inwardly are bound. What we said before, we are bound by Allah's doing, right? So outwardly we're free, and inwardly we're bound by Allah's agency, Allah's doing. But here the poem says we are bound by destiny. So now we want to go into defining destiny. But note that fate, decree, and destiny contain in them some ambiguity, right? So in English or in Arabic, Qada and Qadar, there's a little bit of ambiguity. In English, fate, decree, destiny, these are the things that, are bound to happen to us. There's some ambiguity. What exactly does each of those mean? And we're going to treat fate, decree, and destiny as the same. But we're going to distinguish, as we mentioned in the brief overview, between Allah's choosing from beginninglessness by His will, it's from beginninglessness, and Allah's writing, the creating of writing thereafter, and then the effecting of what He had willed and written by His ability after that. So Allah willed all from pre-eternity and then had written all that is to be. His will and writing, they are not the same, right? His will is an attribute of His, and He chooses by His will from beginninglessness, and His writing is His creating of the pen and the tablet and the writing of the pen in the tablet. So though the will and the writing are not the same, even though the outcome might be the same, where what is written is what Allah had decided from beginninglessness, right? His will and writing, they are not the same, though each as destiny is often named. So you might say, well, that was always His destiny. What Allah had always willed, that was always our destiny. What Allah had written, that too was always our destiny. But the writing, the pen and the tablet are created. His will and writing, they are not the same, though each as destiny is often named. Though what He willed and wrote are both our fate, the tablet and the pen He did create. So what He wrote, He could perhaps erase, but what He willed could never be effaced. So basically, when we talk about destiny, you might mean what Allah always willed. That cannot change. As for what He wrote, that could theoretically change. It's not contrary to Allah's tawheed that what He wrote that He changed what He wrote. It would be in Aqidah, when you study, you learn the ilahiyat, nubuwat, sam'iyat. Ilahiyat, matters of divinity. Nubuwat, matters of prophethood. Sam'iyat, things related to matters of transmission, i.e. also called ghaibiyat, matters of the unseen. So the writing in the tablet is one of the matters of the unseen. It's not necessary to the meaning of Allah or Tawheed. And similarly, what's written, and if anything is to be erased or rewritten, would be a matter of the sam'iyat, the ghaibiyat, matters of the unseen that are transmitted to us. Does anything get rewritten, rescripted? In general, everything is written in the tablet, and that's a fundamental of belief. Does anything get rewritten? That's not a fundamental of belief. There might be some clues that maybe something does, but it's not contrary to Tawheed. Okay? So what He wrote, He could perhaps erase, but what He willed could never be effaced. But here's the thing, and even if He changed the written still, the change would be what He had always willed. It wasn't a new discovery for Allah or a new decision for Allah, that Allah changed his mind. If Allah chose to enact, to create a writing in the tablet and then a rewriting in the tablet, or a wiping and a rewriting in the tablet, that would be consistent with what he had always willed from beginninglessness. He's not making new decisions. His will is beginningless and does not change. Yes, all that was is, or will be, he had, so willed it, whether it is good or bad. So everything that was, is, or will ever be, Allah had willed it from beginninglessness. Whether it's good or bad, nothing is outside of Allah's will. Okay? And nothing is outside of Allah's creating. That in a reality, everything in creation, past, present, future, is by Allah's doing. There's no escaping that. But as we mentioned, sometimes we zoom in on the outer experience, our doing, and sometimes we zoom in on the inner reality, Allah's doing. This is, as we mentioned in the overview, this is a matter of attitude, what we ascribe, even though we recognize the reality. What we ascribe is that when good happens, whether at our hands or to us, we give the credit to Allah. We focus on the inner reality. And when bad happens, whether to us or at our hands, we take responsibility for that. We take responsibility. So it's an attitude. It's not a belief. Belief-wise, we know that the good and bad are created by Allah, and the good and bad are experienced and acquired by us. If he creates for us a noble deed, we give him credit when we so succeed. So when we do a good deed when a good deed happens at our hands, we focus on its being received, emanating from Allah to us. If less than that has been our destiny, for it we take responsibility. So we say if less than that, just kind of out of, instead of saying a bad deed to ourselves, right? And sometimes we will say that explicitly, but it's nice to say if less than that, out of a sort of adab, towards our own souls, a courtesy towards ourselves. Instead of saying that we did bad, when we're talking about it, we say less than good. So if less than that has been our destiny, for it we take responsibility. So if we do good, we look at it as received from Allah to us. And if we do bad, if we do less than good, we look at it as achieved, acquired from us, from us. So the good we look at as to us, the bad we look at as from us. Even though we recognize in terms of creation, both good and bad are from Allah, and in terms of experience and acquisition, both good and bad are from us. So if less than that has been our destiny, for it we take responsibility. So now, notice that we're shifting from aqidah, from belief to attitude. And by the way, if you ever are blessed to compose a text in aqidah, I recommend you sort of take that approach. Give all the conceptualization. And then once all the conceptualization is established, start to shift to the internalization and the attitude and the spirituality of that theology. When you internalize aqidah, it can be like such a tremendously spiritual experience if you have the right attitude. And I mentioned the Kharida of Imam Dardir before. I love Imam Dardir and I love the Kharida, Al-Kharida al-Bahiyya. One of the things I love about it is that it goes into technical aqidah, and then towards the end it says, and all of this is summarized in the Shahada, encompassed in the Shahada. So recite the Shahada a lot. And then he starts transitioning you into attitude and action. So we start off with conceptualization, and then we shift to attitude and action. So now we're shifting you towards attitude. Okay, so if less than that has been our destiny, for it we take responsibility. Now you might find that when you're trying to have this attitude of slavehood and this good attitude towards Allah and towards your accountability, your lower self, the nafs, the ego, sometimes some might call it the inner sucky baby that wants to whine and kick and scream and have these little tantrums, it might, now that you've conceptualized, it might want to basically have you do a full 80 and start to sulk again. Right? When we are trying to give, we gave you the conceptualization of the slavehood and then the attitude of how a slave should be towards his Lord, then it will start, it might start whining, right? And you see this, by the way, if somebody should write a book on the psyche of Satan. You see this tantruming in Iblis, in the devil, in Satan, right? And he does the reverse. Instead of giving credit to Allah and blame to himself, he gives credit to himself and blame to Allah. And the nafs is prone to do this. The inner sucky baby, the lower self, is prone to tantrum this way. So it might take you back. So be aware.